even though we have a million projects going on right now, growing food is the light of my life, and I'm going to make time for it no matter how busy I am. So it's sunny today, but you could tell it's kind of chilly still outside. We're coming into that fall season, and it's really time, like a week and a half ago at least, to get my fall seeds and winter seeds started. So I'm going to talk through what we're planting here in this area behind me today, and we're going to direct sow some things eventually. And then we're also gonna get some seeds started in trays. So to start things off, the things that we're thinking about right now are things that can handle a frost. And we are in a lovely, really beautiful mountainous region, which means we get every single kind of weather that you can imagine. It gets down to the low 20s with snow, which I understand for you in the northern climates is not that hot or not that cold, but for plants, it doesn't really matter, it's cold. And then we also get up, especially in the springtime, a lot of fluctuations up to like the mid 80s. So the things that I'm thinking about are things that have a level of resiliency, can handle some warm and cold. And I'm also thinking about timing, because those young seeds, they want a little bit warmer weather and a little bit warmer soil to really get started and establish themselves. And once they're fully established, then they're really resilient against those freezing temperatures. Their cell structures aren't going to burst in those mild frosts, so to speak, that we get here. So the biggest things that you can really enjoy in the winter season are brassicas, so broccoli, kale, cabbage, bok choy, Brussels sprouts, those kind of things. And then your root crops are also a really good thing to go. Get a quick turnaround with your radishes, so you could sow a quick fall radish crop right about now in this late September season, and then simultaneously sow your winter radishes. Not all radishes are created equal. So we've got our spring and fall radish. You get those small red early scarlet globes. Those are really good option for that. But then you also have your winter radishes, like your Spanish black radish or your watermelon radish. And those are bigger. They're going to have a larger size. They need a longer time to develop, but they also are more resilient to the colder weather. So if you're planting a winter radish, you can expect it to establish itself and then really not be ready to harvest until early March. Winter gardening, cool weather gardening is something that you have to allow yourself to be patient with, because they are going to stop growing entirely pretty much from January through the end of February. There's going to be no growth on any of the plants, and that's why you want to establish them. They're literally just dormant, sitting still. You're probably not going to want to harvest from them because they need as much photosynthesis as they can, even in dormancy. But then come that late February, March, when things thaw out a little bit, the soil gets a little bit warmer, you're drowning in greens and you're drowning in all of these wonderful things. And because you took the time to set yourself up in the fall season, your abundance comes with ease in that spring season. And you're not trying to plant spring crops and then have them be late and already going to seed by the time midsummer rolls around and you want to be putting tomatoes and peppers in the ground. Plant your stuff now, let it go dormant, let it be, reap the harvest, and power yourself through getting that next season started. This is just the best way that I found to do it. So, and lettuces are really awesome right now. You can find some warmer weather lettuces that try and resist the urge to go to seed when it's hot out, but for the most part, lettuces really just want that cooler weather. That's why most lettuce is grown on the coast of like Central California, because it most of the time does not get above 70 degrees there, and it's cloudy all the time. That's like ideal lettuce weather. Lettuces need constant moisture, either from the air or on the ground. They need some kind of consistent humidity to really thrive. So whatever environment and whatever time of year that is for you, just plan it in that regard. Just say like, okay, well, what does this plant need? This lettuce needs consistent moisture, consistent humidity, and temperatures below 70 degrees. How do I set myself up to make sure that it can have that, and how can I do it with ease? And for me, that's planting right now. So get our lettuces started. One of my favorites to plant this time of year is carrots. Carrots will take forever to germinate unless they have a little bit warmer weather. And so what I do is, even though they need consistent humidity for seeds and you barely put them across the top of the soil, when you sow them, they do so much better if you plant them in warm weather like now and then let them mature as it gets cooler. They're going to be sweeter. The sugars develop more fully in the colder weather, so you get a better tasting carrot in the winter, and you don't have to wait as long for the seeds to germinate when you plant them in the late summer when the soil temperatures are warm enough to trigger germination for the seeds. So carrots is definitely something I'm going to be sowing right now, and I'm probably going to sow a lot of it because I can store them with ease in the ground all winter long. They will not go bad in the soil. I can treat this soil as a refrigerator and come take carrots as I need them. So that's like one of the ultimate survival crops. You can just, I love it so much. And it's not that different in the same regards to like beets and turnips as well. I do the same thing. You get a faster germination rate, and then those sugars will also develop in those plants. And then once they store all of that residual energy to stay dormant through the winter, you can keep them in the soil. Use your soil as a refrigerator, and you get to enjoy these things all winter long, and you can pull them as you need them. Or if you get too much snow, you might want to like put them in a box of sand because it'll be too difficult to access them, or if you get like a permafrost in your soil. Here we don't get that, so I don't have to worry about it. So outside of that, we've got a couple of other really nice items to sow in the winter. Spinach is not a lettuce, so I don't regard it as the same thing, but we'll be planting some spinach. That's an amazing, super cold hardy crop. It'll go down to like -20 Fahrenheit, and it'll just keep pushing out some really great product. And that is something that even if you give it like the minimal coverage of like not getting plastered with snow, it'll just keep growing, and you can actually be harvesting from it all winter long. So spinach is an awesome one. Chard I prefer in the wintertime. I think that the flavor of summer chard is bitter, and while I really love the flavor of bitter and I know that it's important in my diet, there's ways that I prefer to get it that don't include chard. So I'll plant chard here for the winter garden and allow those sweeter greens to be part of my diet. One of my favorites to plant is celery in the winter. Celery requires an amazing amount of water, and that's just not an option for us in the summer warmer climates. And celery also wants to go to seed that time of year, and I don't want to fight it. So I plant celery either late winter or late fall, and I allow it to, like, I'll sow the seeds right now, allow it to grow through the winter where it's getting that lots of moisture that it wants to fill those stalks out, and then pretty much I have to pull it out by like April if I don't want seed. So that's another good one. And mustard, I love to enjoy the greens in the winter, and then I allow the seeds of mustard to sprout in the late spring. If you're not aware, cold weather crops like that, warming temperatures of the soil after they've experienced a winter is what triggers the seeding process for those cooler weather crops. So I use that to my advantage, and I say, okay, well, I love mustard, like the actual food, mustard condiment. And I love mustard greens, that spicy nature. If you add mustard greens into a white bean Tuscan like kale soup, but then you put mustard greens in with it, it's just like, oh, this adds that little kick that you need to like get your body warming and feel good in the winter. And then in the summertime, I harvest all the seeds and I make a big batch of Dijon or regular yellow mustard or stone ground mustard, and I can that up in small jars so we have the condiment of mustard to enjoy whenever we want it, and it's all coming from the same space. And when I let it go to seed, it means that I can reserve the seeds that I want for the next year. So There's lots of opportunity with the winter garden. I can talk about it forever. I'm trying to stay organized with you here. So today you can see we've still got some work to do on like clearing out these beds, but for the most part, I can at least make a game plan here of what I want where, and I can do my measurements and spacing to start the right amount of seeds of each thing so that we don't plant too much or not plant enough. This is my first year in this garden, so it's going to take some getting used to. Your space is always changing, and you have to understand how to work with your environment. When your environment changes, it's really important to take the time to just learn with it. It's no pressure, just learn with it. Just take your time and learn how the water hits the land, learn how the sun rises and where it faces, and we'll learn where the heat feels more prominent in the space. I'm going to learn a lot this year, and I'm going to make mistakes, and I already know that going into it, but I know that I'll have some successes, and that those learning opportunities that I am gaining are going to make me that much more successful next winter. So I have 14 150-gallon smart pots that I have available to plant for winter crops. And one of the things that I forgot to mention is that I'll be planting garlic as perimeter crops around all of my winter seeds because garlic needs the winter to mature and develop, and so it needs to be planted around the middle of October, and it is a really awesome pest deterrent. So you can plant your garlic all in one block if you prefer. But I prefer to use it as a border crop, especially when I'm using smart pots and especially when I am living in the middle of a forest, because you know as well as I do that deer and bears are going to mess this ish up like nobody's business. So I have to take into consideration with my spacing that garlic is going to need a 6-inch perimeter around itself for optimal growing in each pot. And so I'm going to plant a perimeter of garlic in each pot. And then in addition to that right now, all I have available for me to sow into right now is 2 of these seed trays. I don't want to overdo it, and I always overdo it. So I'm trying to rein myself in and just use these 2 blocks for now, because I always underestimate how much space winter crops take up, especially things like cabbage. I always try and overplant my pot. My cabbage is going to need about 3 to 4 feet of space, and when you look at that entire pot being 4 feet, that cabbage is going to be planted in the middle of the pot. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to plant a perimeter of faster harvesting crops. So radishes, for example, are going to go around the outside, maybe some radish and lettuce on the outside of the cabbage that I can harvest before the cabbage gets too big. And then on the very outside of those pots, I'm going to be planting my garlic to deter deer. I am going to be putting fencing around the pots so that it will keep the deer out further, because garlic alone will not do it. One of the things that is such a joy of being a gardener is having biodiversity in your diet, having a diversity of colors and micronutrients that allow you to thrive. So what I am going to be doing is working on that balancing act between not planting too much of one thing, even if I love it and I know it'll be of good use, and making space and timing for being able to do subsequent harvests and maximize the space that I do have. So I have 10 rows of 5 cells, so I have 50 cells to plant out those brassicas, and I know that only 5 of them are going to be cabbage, but 10 of them can be kale, because kale can take up a lot less space. I prefer the smaller leaves. I harvest it young, so I'm happy to take up 10 kale plants on my pots. In addition to that, I've got collards to take up more space. That's only going to be 5, and I'm probably still going to have more seeds sown than I do have for space in the garden, but there is some overflow soil pots in other parts of the garden, and I don't know if I'm going to use it yet or not. Bok choy, it's a purple baby bok choy, so I can definitely do 10, maybe even 15 of those, because they're going to be smaller plants, take up less root space there, and if you harvest them young, you can just take them out earlier. On a side note, I would really love to sow seeds like Charles Dowding does with beets and multi-sow the beets in trays. And I'm going to try that again but I will tell you that at this point I have had no success with doing that, and frankly I've had very little success growing beets in general. So this year I'm hoping to maybe try both ways and see which way feels better for me and how I'm gardening, and maybe take some lessons and learnings along the way to see if I can create a better environment for the beets to thrive. Since we're basically doing a gardening 101 here, I'll talk about where I get my seeds as well. And I definitely get it from several places. I want to support several companies of people who are trying to do really good things. And there are so many opportunities out there for people who are thinking that it's too expensive to get seeds. I can send you a million links of free seeds, and I can show you that it is super feasible to get free seed if you prefer it, or if you can't quite make it happen. So heck, you send me a comment, I'll send you a little. I think I have enough seeds that I could probably send you a little starter pack of winter gardening seeds. So one of the places that I love to get seeds is Baker Creek. What I prefer with Baker Creek is getting things that are more rare, that are new to me growing, and I get to learn something new about growing a plant, and that I can count on really high quality. So I don't get a lot of my seeds from Baker Creek, but I definitely window shop Baker Creek all the time, and I love what they're doing, so I do want to support their mission. Often with Baker Creek, when I take the time to buy seeds from them, it's because they've sent me an email and said, hey, we're doing a fundraiser, and all of the proceeds from the seed purchases this day are going to support people who have just been affected by natural disasters. That's a really great opportunity for me to get what I need and create a giving space, and that brings me all around joy. And if I can start my gardening season in a space of giving, then it already makes things better. So Baker Creek, definitely a good place. MI Gardener, I get like their farmers or their homesteading collection a lot because it's more seed and their price point is really approachable. So you're getting, like with their homestead collection, you're getting really reliable varietals that across the test of time have proven to be super abundant crops. So that's like something I count on with MI Gardener and that I love using. The other place that I get a lot of seed from is Botanical Interests. They have a really awesome opportunity to learn on their seed packets. They have a ton of information both inside and outside the packet, and I will spend my winter and spring season reading and reading and reading these packets just to make sure that I get all the information right. And so eventually, if I read it enough, it kind of just stores in there, and I feel more comfortable with the development of the plant over time, because that takes some getting used to, especially when you're growing new varietals. I also really love Kevin and the team over at Epic Gardening, who owns Botanical Interests, as a more recent purchase, and I think they're doing some really cool things with the company since they acquired it. So I'm definitely going to keep supporting Botanical Interests and the Epic Gardening team, who's just really trying to make the world a better place, in my opinion. So go you guys, they're great. When I first started gardening, the best place that I found to get a seed starting setup was True Leaf Market. The reason that I went through True Leaf Market when I first started gardening is because I had a challenge of being able to source seeds getting started without a ton of money, and they had a starter pack of like, they were gonna send me for like $25, they were going to send me over 100 packets of seed. That was basically the seed that they had too much of at the end of the season. So they had like an end of season sale, and it was like this bulk pack of like, you don't know what you're going to get, but it's $25 for over 100 packs of seeds. And that's really cheap, because an average seed packet is like $3 to like $7, sometimes up to $15, depending on the rarity of the seed. So I was like, I'm all for it. Like, I don't care. I'm just going to need to grow food because I need to eat and I don't have a lot of money. So that's kind of where this whole thing started, but it's grown into something a lot more from there. And I was able to grow both a summer and winter garden basics from the packet that they sent me. So I'm super grateful to True Leaf Market and the journey that they've really set me on, which is just like pursuing a life that brings in a connection with Earth that I could not have possibly imagined. It's so much better than I could have imagined. So And I always end up getting starts from the little tents that I see on the side of the road, because I think, like, if you can support them, do it. Like, they're doing good things for the world, and anytime I can, I'm gonna go ahead and get a couple of plants from them, even though I probably don't need them. Alright, so my purple lady bok choy, I haven't even opened this packet yet. It's 200 seeds in here. So I'm going to sow 10 of these 200 seeds, and I'm going to have an abundant harvest, just like to put it in perspective. So green sprouting broccoli. Broccoli will put a big head, and then when you harvest that, if you leave the plant in the ground, it'll keep trying to go to seed, and the seed comes from the little buds here that turn into flowers. And we just eat the premature flower buds on broccoli. So what I'll do is I'll prematurely harvest the big head, because I prefer the smaller stalks anyway. They're easier to process. And so I will then get a bunch of really small, like thinner shoots of broccoli throughout the late winter and early spring to enjoy. Broccoli's hard to grow. Don't start with broccoli. If this is how you're starting, like, no. If you want to really like start with kale. Even if you don't like kale, just get used to growing it and learn to love it, because there's ways that you can prepare it that make it delicious. So kale, I've got a ton. Jacinto kale is that super, really dark green, thin, long, also called like Tuscan kale, I think is what it's called, or dinosaur kale. So I'll definitely sow a row of that. And then I really love those deep greens for the vitamin K values and other chlorophyll content that you get from that. And then the other one that I'll grow is the red Russian kale. This one does really well in super cold climates, and it's got a purple stem with like a little bit more flat leaf structure. So whereas the Jacinto kale has that super rough leaf that creates a certain texture, that the red Russian kale has like a smooth leaf that creates a very different texture, which adds some diversity to your palate when you're enjoying food from the garden in the kitchen. Oh boy. Alright, well, see, this is where I get in trouble, because now I have more seed rows than I have planned, and then this is where I just start planting too much. I gotta find my collars. I don't know why they're not in with my brassicas. Oh my god, giant spider. Yee! Final tip. Label. Label, 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 label. I'm telling this to myself as much as I am to you. Ask me how I know how important it is to label. Just label. Use a popsicle stick, use another stick, use a picture, I don't care. Label it. Just label it. Okay? Editing Shannon here. I wanted to sign off on that little mini winter garden tutorial, what seeds you can get started, what you can be thinking about with timing on your plants, and what you can do to just take time to enjoy the process and think about the culinary aspect of the food that you will be receiving when you go into the long game of a winter garden. I hope some of this was helpful for you. There's so much information out there, and I feel like this is just one of many things that you can watch to learn about. I really appreciate you taking the time to check out some of the things that I've learned since I've been gardening for the last few years, and let me know in the comments what was helpful for you. If it was, I'd love to hear more. If you have more questions about anything that I did say, let me know. If you want to see more of this, that would be cool to know too. So we hope to see you again soon here at the Earth and Soul Living Homestead, and we will talk more gardening soon.